Welcome to Thinking Forward. Today we're spending the day with Renee and Joe van Tilburg at the business that they own and operate, Seed Solutions Limited, which is the largest winter plant specialist in Australasia. We'll be talking to Renee and Joe, as well as their senior staff member Victoria, about where the business came from and how it got to where it is today, along with all the challenges that they've faced along the way.
The company produces maize and sweet corn seed for overseas customers. So we produce parent seed, we produce hybrid seed, and we produce hand-pollinated nurseries, which is the beginning of the breeding cycle. So we pretty much do everything from beginning to end in the breeding / production cycle for our customers. So the company started in 1996 after I got made redundant from crop and food research. At that time I was managing maize nurseries for international customers, and when I got made redundant they gave up the entire business, so we picked up the customer base, and that was the starting of the company.
So what were the really tough parts about starting out?
Doing a lot of these things on your own, of course, having to make all the decisions and having to be responsible for all aspects of the business, getting the money in, invoicing, payroll, these are all new to us. What should we charge? How to build an extended customer base, marketing, sales. My job originally with crop and food, of course, had been more on the agronomic side, so adding in all of these other aspects was a big challenge.
So tell us about what's happened since then, because obviously you've grown into quite a big business.
Yeah. Okay, the business has changed enormously. So originally when we first started out it was all hand pollinations, which is very labour intensive, and then we started moving into production as well, still maize and sweet corn seed, and that evolved into growing parent seed on a large, or hybrid seed on a large number of isolated fields. And then along with all of those challenges came how to cultivate and spray and the logistics of managing a large number of fields.
Yeah, g'day, my name's Neil Lapan and I'm the harvester driver at Seed Solutions. This machine works it starts at the head, which strips the cobs from the stalks. The cobs then go through the throat, which then pass into the 501 processing unit, where any excess leaves or other stalks get mulched out and spat out the side of the machine. Then the stalks pass through another mulcher and any more leaves and stalks get spat out the other end. And then in the final elevator there, they land in a hopper and get taken up and dropped into the hopper, which I can then tip into a truck once it's full. So around the world, we're harvesting at a point where the crop's greener and greener. Whereas back in the days, they'd wait until the crop was where the cobs were just about falling off of the stalks before they cut it. Whereas nowadays they've realised you can cut it while it's still quite green, but it's all based on the dryness of the kernels in the cob. If something goes wrong, I jump out the cab, shut the machine off, get out the multitude of spanners that I got under the seat and fix it myself. One of the gathering belts has just come loose just because of rubbish that builds up in the head here, so I've got to pull the idler back and put the belt back on, and then I'll be able to get back on with the job. The great part about working at Seed Solutions is all the staff are pretty young, so around my age, and we all get along pretty well. We do a lot of social activities outside of work, just because you spend so much time with each other during the season. When you're doing 12-hour days, 6 days a week, you do get to know each other pretty well.
Some of the values that are important to me and that I particularly recognise as unique to, or reasonably unique to Seed Solutions, is that we are all about equal opportunity. So we are prepared to take on people with limited experience but who have the right attributes of keenness and enthusiasm, and we are prepared to take on a lot of female staff in what's traditionally a male-dominated industry. So at the moment we probably have slightly more than 50% of staff are female, and amongst in some of those roles, they are traditionally male-dominated roles. So we have female staff driving tractors and planting and cultivating and spraying, and it has been very successful for us. Other values that are fairly unique to us, we are on controlled traffic and wide wheel spacings, and we would have one of the purest forms of controlled trafficking in the world. It is a company value in looking after the soils and trying to maximise yield and minimise cultivation costs.
Do you think these values make it easier for you to recruit staff each year?
No. I think certainly in terms of the controlled trafficking and the wide wheel spacings, that's a challenge because nobody else particularly is doing it. So there isn't a pool of people out there who are familiar with the idea, who are on board with the concept. So that's a big challenge. In terms of employing young staff and having quite a few female staff, that obviously gives us a broader base to choose from.
Can you tell us about inbreeding depression?
Okay, so inbreeding depression is common with maize, and it's the reason in the end that it hybridises so successfully. So as you self-pollinate maize, it loses vigour. So if you imagine a hybrid crop that you've all seen in your travels around the countryside, it will be taller than this, for example. As you self-pollinate it, it will gradually get smaller and smaller, and can get down, in fact, it can get down to as short as this. And it's not due to a poorly grown crop, it's just simply due to the fact that it's inbred. So all the recessive genes have obviously accumulated, and because it's been inbred, all those recessive genes are now expressed. And that leads to inbreeding depression. And the whole idea of hybridising maize is that two inbreds, which obviously have inbreeding depression, may only be so big, crossed together will produce a hybrid that is very tall and vigorous and will typically yield 3 to 4 times the amount that the actual inbred will yield.
We visit the Seed Solutions Winter Nursery and meet Joe, who oversees this side of the business.
Joe, can you tell us about what happens here and how a typical season operates?
Okay, so this is our winter nursery site. We're importing the seed from the Northern Hemisphere countries. They are harvesting seed in September, October, and they're sending the seed to us to produce a generation in our summer. So in detail, the steps are the seed arrives in October, we pick it up from the airport, we sort the packets, there's 25,000 of these packets, we sort them into order so they can be planted in the field as per coordinates, and we know exactly in the field where each of these codes are. As we are controlling the whole process from start to finish with the hand pollinations, the first step that the crew do every morning is to go shoot bagging. They're putting a little plastic bag over the shoots to isolate the shoots before they silk. So this is done by ripping the leaf off and sliding that bag over. So now that shoot is going to become a silk inside that bag. We have controlled that step. It's very detailed, we have to be very particular with our planning. The girls are well trained as per our systems. We plant the packets with a plot planter. We can do 3,000 to 4,000, sometimes 5,000 in a day. So I'm now going to pull apart an ear and show you what is inside. Okay, so that is the cob inside with all of the silks. Each of those silks leads down to an ovule. We need each of those silks to be touched by the pollen grains to give us one seed. So each of these individual silks, if touched by a pollen grain, will give us one seed. The plants are then let to grow from November, December, growing nicely. In early January, we're hoping that the summer has been kind and we've got nice warm conditions, and we then do the hand pollinations. So the 3 steps there are we're putting the plastic bags over the shoots to isolate the shoots. We then, in a couple of days' time, once the plant has pollen, we can hang the paper bag over the tassel, and we are then able the next day to do the hand pollination. So on this plant here we have a lovely big silk on this plant. We now have the bag hanging. This was put up yesterday afternoon to collect the pollen. The tassel in this bag has now been isolated for a whole day from any other tassels, any other pollen in the nursery. So we know that the pollen in this bag is from this plant only and not from any other plants. I'm just shaking the tassel, the pollen is in the bag. I'm sliding the bag up just slightly. Pollen bag over. And just a shake like that. You can see the pollen coming out. There'll be lots of pollen that has touched the silks inside the bag. So that plant is now pollinated. The bag will stay here until harvest time in about 7 weeks' time. Okay, so this is what I would call early generation material. It's a very short plot. The clients have only sent us a maximum of 10 seeds per plot. So on this label it is giving us a lot of information. Basically that is the entry code that was on the packet. It's now on this label. This plot has this code right through to the time we re-export it back to Europe. We have done 3 pollinations on this row, 3 self-pollinations. These plots, because they're early generation, sometimes you see some quite ugly plants. The breeder will come out to New Zealand in March and he will look at all of these short early generation plots and he is going to eliminate about 40% different traits that he doesn't like, and he won't want that resulting seed to go back to Europe. So that's what he will be doing when he's here in March. And then we'll now walk to more finished lines. These lines have been through a selection process. They would have started out as an early generation line, the short plots, and they've now gone through several selection processes, and we're at a stage where we are bulking up quite a bit of seed for the clients. These lines were pollinated, let's say 5 weeks ago, and we're at the stage now we can see lots of nice seed. So I'll just show, if we lift it up, we'll see a nice small cob with plenty of seed on it. Another 2 to 3 weeks time, we're going to come through and pull all of these bags up and harvest the cobs, put them into an onion bag which has the label on it with the barcode with the entry number. The onion bags are then collected and put into the mechanical dryer for 7 days at 38 Celsius to be dried down. After 7 days, the cobs are nice and dry and we are able to put them through the shelling machine, and then we package them up into bags as per that code that I came into New Zealand on, and then we're getting it inspected with Assure quality. The seed is delivered to the airport and sent back to the client in Europe, and then they are getting it ready for their spring planting.
Jo, can you tell us how you staff the different stages of the process?
Okay, so at planting time we have a small crew on, maybe 7 to 10 people. Some of those are students who have finished their university studies early November, mid-November onwards, and they will be students that we've had from previous summers. So that crew is reasonably small. The January crew that we have, we interview in early December. A lot of year 13 students and wanting to go to university need the money to get them through university, and we also have quite a few return students each summer, which is great because they can help train the new students on all the processes. It is very detailed in the nursery. There's lots of steps. We need it all to be done to a high standard. Basically they've all got to conform to what we require. Occasionally we do face some challenges with these students. The students who maybe don't have such a positive attitude just find it a bit of a struggle to be told what to do. That's not common really, but you do get the odd one each year, which makes life a little bit interesting. But overall we have an exceptional bunch of students each summer. They're a pleasure to work with. We do keep in touch with previous employees. Over the years we've had some lovely feedback of jobs that they've secured, some pretty amazing jobs. They've travelled the world, done really well for themselves.
Jo, it's great to see such a strong female presence within your business. Can you tell us a bit about that?
It's been that way for many years now, that the females are quite predominant in our workforce. During the summer months at this site we would like a few more guys, just to balance things out, but they just don't seem to apply in December. And we just have lots of girls, so that's just how it's been.
What do you think the reasons for that are?
Maybe they're a little bit put off by the detail required. We do specify in our ad that there is a lot of detail, so maybe that's the case. They just think it's a little bit soft, or I really don't know.
We're talking with Renee about the challenge of managing and developing staff here at Seed Solutions.
Finding the right sort of staff and keeping them is really an ongoing challenge, and we have a lot of unique things about our business. So straight out seed production is very unusual in this area. Pretty much we're the only people doing it. So those are challenges in themselves. So it's not like there's a pool of people who have experience in seed production. So that's always a challenge. And then we have a lot of other unique things about the business. We're on 2.5 metre wheel centres, we're on controlled trafficking and auto steer, and it's a shift in mindset about how to manage soils and land, and often when we have employed older staff, they come from the traditional background, and getting them on board with the concepts that we have around controlled traffic and reducing compaction. We now have a predominantly young staff. Most are under 30, probably bar one, and we get them on board from the outset with all the things that are unique to our business. So we train them up in aspects of seed production and aspects of cultivation and auto steer and controlled trafficking that are fundamental to the company's culture and values. Most staff now come to us with very little relevant experience, but with appropriate background degrees, if you like, and then we train them up from there. And we now have a really good team, and that's actually been very successful for us.
How long on average do you tend to be able to keep your staff for?
I would say that average turnover is, it's a guess, but it might be 5 years. Victoria is one of our longest serving staff members. It started as a student, but now this is her 6th or 7th summer, and we've had some others that have probably been with us 4 or 5 years now. So Victoria's role in the company is primarily on the production side of the business, because we have the hand-pollinated nursery and the production. So we have a multitude of production fields scattered around, and Victoria's role is to manage the roguing crews and the detasseling crews and all the other multitude of jobs that we need to do in our production fields. She's also heavily involved at planting time with the hand-pollinated nursery, managing those crews, managing the thousands of plots that we have to plant, and they all have to be in a very specific order. There's an enormous amount of detail. And then she also has an HR role in the company as well.
So when I first started with Seed Solutions, I was working in the fields, doing the manual labour kind of things, roguing, detasseling, with a group of friends. We all started at the same time, so came to work each day with my best friends really, worked in the maze and went home. And then as time progressed, I kept coming back in my summer holidays, and I kept, I think, kind of putting my hand up for the somewhat different jobs. So I saw the tractors, and I grew up on a farm, so I put my hand up to try and get onto them. I always used to do a little bit of tractor driving with my dad, so I kind of just followed Renee around until he let me into these kind of things. I'm also reasonably tech savvy, I guess, so all the GPSs and whatnot, I could help tinker with them and fix them. Like Renee said, we do controlled trafficking, so that's all on a GPS system. And unfortunately, GPS systems, they're a lot more trouble than what they may seem to be. So to get a tractor to drive straight, it seems very simple, but there's a lot more to it. This area is very hilly. It's really not designed for the GPS systems that we do use, but we want to try and make it work, and we're committed to try making it work. So I would go and I would help fix the GPS, and then when I was in there, I'd maybe have a little drive around while I was in it. Next thing I knew, I started planting and started laying the fertiliser, talking to Renee more and learning more of the ins and outs of the company. And then I moved into the office a little bit, so my role became more organising. So I went from the tractor work to a little bit more of the organising, because I'd been returning for 2, 3, 4 seasons, so I knew where most of the fields were. I knew most of the processes by then, so I kind of moved into, instead of just the standardised tractor work and field work, into more of the helping out Renee, being his 2IC, and then from there it just led into some more fun opportunities, I guess. The more I learned about the company, the more I was able to get involved. So when the customers came over to visit, I knew how their productions worked, I knew how their nurseries worked, so I was able to kind of talk to them and get amongst, I guess. And then as Renee and Joe developed the company, I guess I kind of just started to grow with it. Next thing I knew, they were sending me off to Europe and whatnot to visit the customers for them. So like Renee said, he's got little kiddies now, and they needed someone who knew the ins and outs of the company. Going overseas is so important. These companies have been doing this business for 100+ years. They have the experience, they have the knowledge. I can pick up little things off that knowledge and off them. Yes, we're all the way down in the southern hemisphere, and it's quite a way to send the seed, but the product that we produce is high quality. So the more we go and visit them, the more we show a presence, the more comfortable they are with us. It's really about showing them that they can trust us and that they can trust sending the seed all the way to this little corner of the world.
Do you have direct competitors here in New Zealand, or is most of your competition offshore?
No direct competitors in New Zealand. Our competition is really mostly Chile, which has the benefit of a warmer climate, so the crop grows faster, it can be harvested and sent back to Europe or the US quicker. Plus they have cheap labour, but that's probably not so much of a factor these days. I think our efficiency is so much better than Chile that the price difference between our nurseries and Chile is not that great anymore, so we've closed the gap pretty significantly. So the opportunities for us, we're always interested in looking at alternate crops, but in the meantime, there's a real European need for GMO-free seed, including sweet corn seed, which has not been a traditional export market for us to Europe. It has been to other countries. So the Europeans are very concerned about having GMO-free seed. In the past, they've imported a lot of seed from the US, but now there are GMO events with sweet corn itself, not just maize, but with sweet corn. So there is an increasing concern that there will be a contamination event in Europe that has come about by importing American seed. So there is a lot of interest by the Europeans in looking to source seed from other countries. And one of those countries is New Zealand. South America is pretty much a write-off because Chile and Argentina are full of GMO events. So there is increasing interest in coming to New Zealand. So it's definitely an opportunity for us, and we've seen some growth in the last 2 to 3 years simply because of that.
What a great story of Kiwi ingenuity overcoming challenges and barriers. Joe and Renee have created a fantastic workplace which has helped them battle the seasonal work issue. See you next time on Thinking Forward.